The Russian authorities don't call it propaganda. They call it conversations about what matters. It sounds harmless, even wholesome. Every Monday morning across Russia, children file into classrooms, open their notebooks, and prepare for a new subject that didn't exist just a few years ago. No tests, no homework. Just a teacher reading from a government-approved script accompanied by slickly produced videos. My name is Elvira Bary. I was born in the Soviet Union and I remember exactly how it feels when the government starts shaping your worldview before you are old enough to understand what's happening. Back then, we had communist rituals, patriotic songs, and essays praising the motherland. The goal was to build loyalty before conscience. Today, history repeats itself. Russia is once again raising children not to think but to obey. In the process, they are creating something much darker. Future imperialists, nationalists, and executioners. People who will follow any order, no matter how senseless or cruel. This is how Putin's Russia brainwashes its children, and it's happening right now. Conversations about what matters, launched in 2022, are now mandatory weekly classes in every Russian school, from first grade through graduation. At first, they were introduced quietly. Then came a grand patriotic campaign. The core message is drilled in early. Russia is always right, Russia is strong, and Russia must be defended, even if that means dying for it. But let's be clear, when they say Russia, they don't mean the people. They mean the state, the elite, the small circle of men determined to hold power for as long as possible. Men who need bodies for their wars, fists for their police, voices for propaganda, and loyal bureaucrats to keep the system running. Of course, none of this is said out loud. Russian propaganda operates at a very high level, perfected over generations, thanks to Soviet legacies and even older traditions rooted in Orthodox religious schooling dating back to the birth of Russian Christianity. It taps into instincts older than any ideology. First, it exploits humanity's most basic division: us versus them. Children learn to be vigilant, always watching for spies, traitors, and anyone deviating from the approved path. Second, it creates sacred symbols and abstract ideas, things children cannot touch, question, or verify. They quickly learn loyalty to these symbols earns praise. Failure means rejection and social exclusion. That fear of rejection kicks in long before children understand it. In prehistoric times, being cast out from the tribe meant death. That instinct lives inside us. Children comply, not because they believe, but because something deep whispers, stay safe, stay accepted. Finally, there is peer pressure. When everyone repeats the same message, quiet disagreement makes you feel small and powerless. You can't organize or resist. Group pressure is another ancient survival instinct. In the Stone Age, unity meant life, disagreement meant death. Being the black sheep feels dangerous, even if you are physically safe. Constant stress forces you to fight yourself rather than the system. Those running these propaganda lessons aren't evolutionary psychologists. Most don't know why their approach works. They are simply following a formula passed down through generations. Because those in power have always known this is how you control your subjects. If this feels familiar, it should. Russia has done it before. In the Soviet Union, education was never neutral. It was a weapon. Children learned that Stalin was the wisest man of all times, that the Communist Party was their true family, and that betraying the state was worse than betraying their own parents. Loyalty wasn't encouraged. It was demanded. Even math problems had military themes. If one Soviet tank destroys 3 enemy tanks per hour, how many will it destroy in 6 hours? Teachers weren't free to teach. Their job was to mold Homo Sovieticus, a new kind of human who fought collectively, obeyed blindly, and trusted the state more than their own eyes. Deviation was harshly punished. A teacher criticizing the party could be branded an enemy of the people. Students were encouraged to report on parents, neighbors, even classmates. One boy became a national hero for denouncing his father to the secret police. His name was Pavlik Morozov. From 1948 to 1991, his monument stood in a Moscow park. I remember how it was. From the first day of school, we knew who our heroes were. Lenin, father of the Soviet state. Gagarin, the first man in space. And a long list of child martyrs from wars and revolutions. But none of them felt real. Their portraits were everywhere, black and white, retouched so many times their faces seemed unnatural. We didn't see them as people, but as icons. Every week, we gathered for our version of today's conversations about what matters, called Political Information Sessions. Teachers read articles from Pravda or Izvestia, celebrating Soviet successes, denouncing the imperialist West, and praising the party. It was painfully boring. Nobody listened. Even teachers didn't care. For them, it was just another box to check. The actual message didn't matter. We didn't know anyone from America or Israel, the countries we were told to fear. Lenin and communist ideologues had no real bearing on our lives. But for some students, these sessions offered an opportunity. The top students, hungry for praise, volunteered to prepare materials, often the first step toward a party career. In reality, these sessions served 2 purposes. Administrators proved their loyalty by reporting they had taken place and identified eager students to promote into Soviet youth organizations. The Soviet goal was to reach children early. If successful, no one needed to fight for their loyalty later. That's why the early Soviet Union had no shortage of young, ideologically driven people ready to fight wars or build railroads beyond the Arctic Circle. And that's exactly what today's conversations about what matters aim to replicate, creating a new generation ready to sacrifice for the idea, an expendable resource. When the war with Ukraine began, Putin was genuinely surprised. There was no line at the enlistment offices. He'd assumed people would eagerly die for his ambitions. They didn't. The generation now in their 20s and 30s grew up without this kind of early patriotic indoctrination. Putin's only option was to pay enormous sums to persuade people to fight. But his system doesn't have bottomless pockets. It's far cheaper and wiser to invest in propaganda now. In 5 or 10 years, he'll have a fully indoctrinated generation ready to fight and die simply because the man at the top tells them to. The Russian state ordered schools to brainwash children, but quickly realized it didn't have enough trained people to do it effectively. So lesson plans are developed centrally by the Institute for Education Strategy and the Ministry of Education. All materials come prepackaged, unloaded to an online platform ready for teachers to download and deliver. Every week, teachers receive a full script, exact phrases to say, specific images to show, and moral conclusions to emphasize. A leaked 2023 document outlined the intended outcomes. Students should understand the moral correctness of Russia's actions in Ukraine, admire the heroism of its soldiers, and identify threats to traditional values. One objective even included building greater resistance to destructive Western influences. But here's the core problem. There's hardly any real ideology left. Nothing fresh or inspiring. Nothing that could define a person or stir genuine passion. Propaganda works best when the world divides neatly into us versus them. Suppose Russia claims to defend traditional values. Fine. But what exactly are those values? According to the ministry, they include life, dignity, human rights, patriotism, strong families, creativity, humanism, justice, collectivism, historical memory, and unity. But how is that different from values held in France, America, Britain, or Japan? Worse yet, reality in Russia directly contradicts nearly every one of these ideals. Life, human rights, historical memory, all in ruins. Ultimately, only primitive nationalism remains. And that entire us versus them narrative rests on three lies. The lie that the West rejects these values or actively attacks them. The lie that the West has always sought to destroy Russia. And the lie that Russia's rulers actually uphold these values themselves. Family values. Putin abandoned his wife for a younger gymnast. Humanism and mercy. Russian soldiers are sent to war as disposable tools, let alone Ukrainians dying under Russian bombs. This propaganda only works if children are cut off from the outside world. And that's exactly what Russian authorities ensure. Even if parents disagree with indoctrination, there's little they can do. In Soviet times, children were state property. Today, that same attitude is quietly returning. Today's conversation about what matters don't just praise Russia, they rewrite history. Stalin is rehabilitated. The annexation of Crimea is celebrated. Opposition leaders are raised. The war in Ukraine renamed a special military operation and presented to children as a noble mission. This is not about ideas. It's about identity. One internal report describes the goal as fostering a unified moral patriotic consciousness. That phrase should scare you, because this is not education, it's programming. So, next time you feel frustrated by political division in your country, remember, the alternative is this. When you start programming children from age 6 to accept war, loyalty, and sacrifice as moral duties, you're not raising citizens, you're raising fanatics. Some lessons sound harmless: family, tradition, heroes of their motherland. But underneath, the pattern is clear: glorify sacrifice, label dissent as treason, and elevate blind loyalty over critical thinking. One Moscow mother said her 7-year-old came home confused after a lesson on bravery. The teacher explained how noble it was to die for Russia during the special military operation. The child asked, "Mom, would you be proud of me if I died like that?" Another nationwide lesson titled "What is a True Citizen?" praised unconditional loyalty and denounced foreign influence. Children are told the West is corrupt, Ukraine is a Nazi state, and fallen soldiers are martyrs. Teachers assign thank you letters to soldiers at the front. Kids draw flowers and tanks on postcards, which are then delivered directly to the battlefield. A teacher in Voronezh said it plainly. We're not teaching kids how to think anymore. We're teaching them how to obey. And if you don't obey, teachers can be punished. Parents investigated. Children who ask uncomfortable questions become problem students. In one case, a high school principal reported her own students to the police for writing that the war in Ukraine was morally wrong. The students were arrested. Meanwhile, the most obedient children, those who eagerly participate, are labeled patriots. They are praised, promoted, and rewarded, just like in my childhood. Of course, not every teacher wants to become an ideological inspector. But what can they do? I asked a friend of mine who teaches in Russia how this looks in her school. She told me she avoids it as much as possible. Then she quietly added, "Let's talk about something else." She's not alone. Many teachers live in fear. A single complaint from a patriotic parent can trigger investigations. There's a woman in St. Petersburg, let's call her Marina. She's been a literature teacher for 20 years. When ordered to teach about the reunification with Crimea, Marina read Pushkin instead. If they want propaganda, she said, they can hire someone else. She was reported, investigated, and reprimanded. But she's still teaching and still refusing to participate. A mother in Perm posted her son's art assignment online. He was told to draw a tank and write a thank you note to a soldier. Instead, he drew a field of flowers and wrote, "I hope you can come home soon." Her post went viral. The school summoned her. She refused to apologize. When anthropologists interviewed teachers and students about these lessons, two very different realities emerged. One parent described her daughter's experience this way. The teacher is young and reasonable. Yes, she plays the assigned videos, but while they run, she sits on her phone, checks homework, or works on her laptop. The kids sit on their phones too, playing games. She allows it. My daughter doesn't even remember what was said, only rare bits that personally interest her, like something about nature or animals. But she picks up on the teacher's attitude and adopts the same one. It becomes a silent agreement between teacher and students. You show up and sit quietly, I won't interfere. Another mother shared a glimpse into how these lessons actually work. My daughter said that her teacher keeps a rolled up portrait of Putin above the blackboard. During the conversations about what matters lessons, the portrait stays rolled up. But if she hears someone approaching the classroom, maybe the vice principal, she quickly pulls the string and the portrait unfurls. She immediately shifts topics and starts saying something patriotic. This is how the system operates, not through real belief, but through careful performance. Everyone knows what's expected, and everyone pretends, but not everywhere. Another mother described a much darker reality. Here, it's awful. More and more patriotic improvisation from teachers. The children come home and repeat what they've heard. We must be ready to fight for the motherland. Russia is better than those miserable countries. In America, they are still lynching black people, while our school graduates heroically die near Kursk. Every Monday, flag raising, white shirts, the anthem, marching drills. At first it was harmless, but after 3 years of war, it's non-stop Putin and our Donbass. It's getting harder and harder to explain to the children that all of this is a lie. This quiet divide between passive indifference and active indoctrination runs through Russian schools today. What happens when children aren't taught how to think, but what to think? The answer is already visible. The young Russians sent to fight in Ukraine, many just 18 or 19, weren't trained to question orders. They were trained to follow them. They were also trained not to see others, anyone from a different tribe, as fully human. And once your enemy stops being human, anything becomes possible. We've seen the videos: looting, torture, executions, rape. And when these soldiers are captured by Ukrainians, they often don't even feel guilt or responsibility. I had orders. Everybody does it. They made me. This is the consequence of years of propaganda. It teaches that violence in service of the state is noble, that enemies are subhuman, that questioning is betrayal. Even in peacetime, the damage spreads. Students and teachers learn to self-censor. Parents warn their kids, don't talk politics with your friends. Don't ask questions. An entire generation grows up surrounded by unspoken truths, silent fear, and artificial loyalty. In Russia, most Western social media are banned: Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, so everything moves to VKontakte and Telegram. And for anyone like me trying to understand what's happening inside Russia, these platforms are a gold mine. Russians love posting anything that might earn them social points, especially if it might please their bosses. So I expected to find plenty of examples of conversations about what matters proudly displayed. And I did find many VKontakte groups for teachers using that exact title. But what surprised me most was what was not there. Instead of war propaganda, most posts feature coloring pages, lesson schedules, drawing prevention posters, or classroom displays for various holidays. The war is almost invisible. When you step back and look carefully, you see that this entire patriotic movement has naturally split into three distinct groups. First, those cashing in on big federal budgets. They produce glossy videos with staged locations, child actors, and professional editing. But there is nothing genuinely talented or inspiring. Just empty slogans, only this time with better lighting. Second, the bureaucrats dutifully reporting that lessons were held. No creativity, no imagination, just the same empty rituals I remembered from Soviet schools. Third, the countryside, especially depressed regions. Here you find youth military clubs, meetings with veterans, and overt militarization. For many families, this is seen as the only available social ladder. While preparing this video, I was reminded again, this is not a cult like Kanta Stalin. It's simply a system of orders and budgets, handed down from above. And the adults adapt however they can. Some quietly avoid involvement, others profit by putting on a show of enthusiasm. Many simply don't care at all. Yes, there are fanatics, but they are few. And they are unlikely to grow because they have nothing new to offer. No victories, no achievements, nothing that can truly inspire. But in this cynical game played by adults, it's always the children who suffer. By the way, I have a separate video about lonely and unhappy women who ended up supporting dictatorships. Check it out. It's key to understanding the hidden mechanics behind authoritarian regimes. I've noticed a very telling pattern. If you browse school websites in Moscow, St. Petersburg, or the wealthier districts of other major cities, the focus looks very different. College admissions, foreign languages, creativity, and personal development. But in poorer neighborhoods of big cities, the tone shifts. Schools there work hard to please the authorities. Announcements from local administrators, state-sponsored contests, and patriotic holidays. Plenty of flags, plenty of state symbols. And when you scroll through the websites and social media pages of schools in small towns and rural regions, the atmosphere changes completely. Here, you see open glorification of war. Meetings with veterans posing with toy rifles, dressed up for patriotic photoshoots. And the trajectory is crystal clear. The first group, children from good schools, won't be sent to war. They'll become officials, specialists, business owners. The second group, from lower-level urban schools, will fill the state's middle ranks: teachers, clerks, minor bureaucrats. But the third group, the countryside, is being prepared for slaughter. This war is a tax on the poor and on those far from any functioning social ladder. In these regions, militarization is not just ideology. For many families, youth military clubs or patriotic programs offer the only path to recognition, advancement, or even basic stability. And this division is not accidental. The system feeds on inequality. It preserves privilege for a narrow elite while harvesting loyalty and bodies from everyone else. That's why propaganda may seem clumsy and hollow in the cities, but remains dangerously effective where hope is scarce. If this made you feel something, If it helps you see propaganda in a new light, please consider sharing this video. It helps more than you know. And if you want to join me for more deep dives into how power, history, and human psychology shape Russia and the world, make sure to subscribe. New videos come out every Sunday and Wednesday. You can also join my think tank or buy me a coffee using the links below. Every bit of support helps me make more content like this. And finally, thank you, truly.